Welcome to Thrive Alive. I am your host, Nurse Jazmine, and today our special guest who will be joining us virtually is Dr. Donna Baptiste. Welcome, Dr. Baptiste. How are you feeling today?
It's so good to see you. So good to see you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite to join you today.
We are so happy to have you. We are so excited for this episode to learn more about your expertise, hopefully get some tips and some advice on how we can heal through some of our family drama. So before we get started, I want to go over your bio for the audience just so we can kind of let them know who you are. So, Dr. Donna Baptiste is a department chair and clinical professor in the counseling graduate degree program at Northwestern University. She loves teaching, training, and student mentorship and specializes in couple distress, infidelity, child and adolescent/family struggles, divorce recovery and mediation, co-parenting and custody consultations, and ethnic, minority, and immigration family life. Dr. Baptiste is especially devoted to advancing mental wellness in underrepresented minority women. She is the co-author of Promoting Black Women's Mental Health, What Practitioners Should Know and Do, ta-da, and remains deeply committed to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of her life and work. Once again, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Baptiste. Before we go into our interview, someone sent us a letter, and I want to read it to you. And we want your advice and expertise on how this person should address this situation. So, the letter reads, "Dear Nurse Jazmine, this past Christmas was the first Christmas without my grandma Hattie. She passed away last fall. The holidays felt so different, and there is still so much tension within my family. Aunt Helen and Aunt Sharon are constantly fighting over who will keep Grandma's belongings. On top of that, none of my cousins are willing to host family gatherings, so we did not get together to celebrate the holidays like we have in the past. For so many years, Grandma Hattie was the glue that held us all together. Now it feels like things are slowly falling apart. What do you do when the matriarch of your family passes away? What advice can you give to my family as we learn to adjust to new roles and shifting responsibilities?"
Wow. Ooh. And may Grandma Hattie is her name?
Grandma Hattie.
Rest in peace. You know, what comes to mind for me is the loss of an important family member. And I know we talk about grieving a lot, which is actually, it could be a good issue. And it sounds like it's been a year, so this family is grieving. Mm-hmm. But losses in family life, especially of family members that are key to sort of keeping things together, keeping young ones, guiding, mentoring, the glue. I'm thinking of, I don't know if you remember that movie, Soul Food. Remember that? Yeah, so it reminds me a little bit about that. So, in the early stages of grief, and grief can last, so when there's a loss, a powerful loss, people actually grieve. And I think sometimes there is a tendency to think grief is one and done. She's in a better place. So Grandma Hattie is, she's resting with the angels. But what happens is families lose just a sense of balance and stability. And with grief, emotions are powerful. So grief would normally have phases. And the first one is deep mourning. And I would say that lasts for a while. So this family is definitely mourning. And one of the things in grief work, with individuals or families, is triggers that can occur around the anniversary of loss. So as this dear woman says, it's the first Christmas, I think, was said.
First Christmas
without Grandma Hattie, then you have a resurgence of all the feelings of bereavement. And so in family life, I'm actually teaching a class now on couple and family work. And I just actually talked with our students about the importance of when there are changes in family life, and it can happen all kinds of ways: loss, divorce,
Right.
The illness of a family member. You know, there are different ways. It could be somebody loses a job, or different things can happen. And families are, I would say, Black and brown families, things happen. Things can happen a lot. Poor families, things can happen a lot. The family must find a way to, we use the term adapt, which is absorb the change and then accommodate it and shift, you know, almost like moving around, you know? So now somebody might need to take on the role of matriarch, or sometimes without even speaking about these things, people step up,
Right.
or somebody is given the role. Not surprisingly, in times of grief, conflict can ensue. And some of it is driven by loss and grief, but it also has to do with, well, what's our new normal now?
Right.
And so we talk about families needing to adapt to the change and accommodate the change, whatever the change is, and sort of form or maybe recreate a new structure, a new way of being, a new way of working. And there are times when somebody leads us, or sometimes in the real world, family just fall and they find their way, and then they keep moving and absorb the loss, absorb the change, and keep moving. Some families can't; they get stuck, and these are the families that might need specialized support, professional counseling, say for example. But not always. Minister might come along and give some guidance. Friend of the family might drop in and give some guidance. So this family seems to be experiencing normal things, triggered memories of the loss, but also maybe can use a little guidance on how to recalibrate so they could keep moving. And that's how family life works.
I love what you said about adapting and accommodating, because this is, you know, Grandma Hattie, she has gone on to the next life. And we have to, you know, we have to figure out how to keep living, keep going. So I'm so happy that you like used that and you addressed grief, because a lot of times I feel like we try to forget about it or not feel our feelings. So it's important to feel it. It's important to adapt. And I'm glad you brought up, if you need some guidance, even if it's like spiritual guidance or the help of a counselor, then, you know, that's always a great idea. That's always a great resource.
And can I add one other thing about that?
Absolutely.
You know, families, especially, I would say, Black and brown families, for example. Many things have happened if you think in the histories of our peoples, and which is why I'm so interested in you know, vulnerable populations, but not just by race, by any group. Thinking of all the things that are happening in the world right now, families can find their way. But when you have a situation where loss is over and over again, before you could breathe and adjust to one, there's another one. Sometimes we talk about the compounding of loss, and grief becomes complicated. So that will be another reason to seek counseling when things there's so much, the family can barely breathe and catch themselves. So that's another reason to think about how we're doing and what do we need.
You know, I'm going to just insert my personal self into this really quick, because I recently have suffered compound loss. Just
compounded losses,
compounded losses. And it's hard. It's very difficult. So I'm glad that you brought up, you know, seeking counseling, and just, you know, knowing that it's okay that you are grieving. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, but you have to address it and take care of it.
And I will say this, there are many resources in our communities that support people through grief. I would say, you know, friends and family members, religious communities, churches, and so on. One of the things that I'm a big believer in this, so I'm mentioning it so that people listening we must never disenfranchise grief. And by that I mean, never allow grief to have its place, because it's a normal part of adapting to a loss. And so I know sometimes with well-intended ways, we might say, this too will pass. Or we might say something like, go on to a better place, keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
No, grief is a systemic experience.
Mm.
It's in the emotions, which is where people see it, but there's also neurobiology in grief. And the body, the emotions, the spirit must have a place to move through some of the phases. And if it's rushed, sometimes you see consequences in the life course.
Mm.
And so maybe my message is, let's allow grieving, a very human and good experience, to find its way in people's lives, not to rush it, and to support as they move on.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Baptiste. And to our person who wrote this letter, who will remain anonymous, I hope that these tools and advice will help you and your family adapt and accommodate. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the interview, or conversation, I like to call it. The first question I'm going to ask you is, would you please tell us a little bit about your background and what has led you to your current line of work?
So I think you introduced me as, first of all, a professional counselor. And so that means in the state of Illinois, I'm licensed in a couple of fields as a psychologist, as a counselor. And I also have you can call it a specialty in family life. Okay. And that means couple work with families and so on. And I came to that, I remember being 8 years old, and right next to my house, there was a woman, not in my household, but there was a family, and it was a family in which a woman experienced domestic violence. And I remember at 8 to 9 years old, it went on for a while, being very troubled. Mm-hmm. I would worry as I went to bed, what will happen to the children who were my friends? Why is, in this case, a he beating her so much, and so on? And I think I watched my mother fuss with me about it, meaning she was agitated also. Mm-hmm. And my father, wonderful man that it is, wanted us to stay out of it. It burned a path in my brain about the importance of family life. Mm-hmm. And I know we can say, for example, you would think about that idea, and somebody is doing something terrible to another. And yes, that's true. But it also raised my curiosity about, well, how would this change? I'm thinking of all members of the family, and I remember thinking of the woman herself. I even thought of her partner at the time. Turned out he was alcoholic, and we knew that as a young man. And then I thought about the children. That single incident, as I remember it now, birthed my interest in family life, right? And for every stage of education, I found ways to make it relevant to me. So I studied, I researched, I write. As I did that, it occurred to me that the role of women in families was a big deal. And so some of my current work, writing the book on Black women's mental health, when women do not do well in family life, families struggle. Not saying that we don't need other members, fathers, and extended family members, but when the caregivers, the female caregivers of a household do not do well, things do not change as quickly, adapt and accommodate and all that. So it occurs to me that Black women's mental health, or women's mental health in general, in my case, I'm focusing on Black women, but the lives of most women, of all women, when we do well, communities do well, families do well. And so in some ways that, if I were to draw a line through the themes of my interest in work, that would be it.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Like something that happened at such a young age.
At age 9,
that paved the way for all of this great work that you're doing in the community. And I'm so glad you brought up the importance of women's mental health, because we are the nurturers of the family. And just like with our friend with the passing of Grandma Hattie, we're the glue that holds the families together. So that's very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yes, and lest your readers, your listeners that are male or men, father figures, grandfathers, a lot of work is being done about the roles of fathering in family life, or other fathering, where it's somebody else that's coming alongside. not to be diminished at all, and that is good work. And if it's working right, all caregivers will have the support they need.
Right.
And it's about strengthening family life so that people can grow up and the next generation succeeds, and the next generation, and so on. So.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up. We not guys. We not hating on y'all. You know, we just.
I don't want to become the viral video.
Right.
Fathers out of family life, right?
Right. So moving right along, what are some techniques you use in family therapy to help family members foster intergenerational understanding?
Well, I think your listeners would know this, and you don't need a degree, or you could say it's not rocket science. There are generational themes in families that you see in one generation, and then it moves to the next, like a suitcase. It walks into family life, and it's in the next family. Patterns, I would say good ones, you know, particular kinds of careers that people pursue. So sometimes you see a generation of teachers, multi-generations of teachers. I don't know if nursing, medical professionals, that might be in your family. And you see sometimes a way of celebrations and all that. Traditions continue. Along with that idea that positive legacies can transmit across generations is the idea that negative legacies in family life can also continue. And so you see this with addictions. You see one generation of alcohol abuse in a family, and you see the consequences. And so to summarize that idea, the family is an emotional system, and the unfinished business of one generation can trouble the next. And so in work that we do around what we call intergenerational or multi-generational issues, the idea is, well, your listeners would be familiar, breaking cycles. That pattern that is the positive ones we want to keep, and we definitely nurture and support, and it's a resource to family life. The negative ones, where the issues of one generation transmit to the other and trouble the lives of pretty much everybody, and so on, and the next generation, where you see sometimes 3 or 4. In the work of what we call intergenerational counseling, we try to figure out what are those legacies and how is it impacting them now. And the idea is to help the generation you're working with. So let's say it's a couple, or it's a mom and their children, or a family that comes for the work. The idea is how to end that cycle and provide all the supports, including bringing it to awareness, in nurturing and encouraging change, giving voice, communication, all the things that are what I would call the shock absorbers of family life. And so that's the work of intergenerational counseling. And I don't know if I've captured that well, but I hope your listeners will get the idea, the metaphor.
Yeah.
The family is an emotional system, and things transmit over generations.
And we have to first we have to acknowledge, like you said, we have to acknowledge that, okay, this is something that that was passed down to me, and, I'm struggling with it, and I don't want to pass it down to the next generation.
Yes.
So what can I do now to, to fix it, to change it, to break the cycle? So, yeah.
And what I'm struck by is some of the patterns, let's call them multi-generational patterns, and it could just mean one generation to the other, or maybe 3 generations or 4. Most people know them, because they can say, yeah, grandma used to do so-and-so, or this happened, divorce is in our family life, or line, or whatever, because a lot of people are doing sort of, all the ancestry work and stuff. People are trying to track, where did I come from? What were my people like? There are times people are not sure what to do about it. And that's the idea. It's never about just regurgitating the history just to regurgitate it. It's about breaking cycles in the current life, so that the next generation does not struggle with the same matter.
Right. Breaking cycles. We're going to take a quick ad break, and we'll be back with more questions for Dr. Donna Baptiste.
Hi, I'm Pastor Steve Epting, and welcome to Thrive Alive Presents.
We're doing our Thanksgiving food distribution, but in my opinion, it goes beyond just the Thanksgiving, the food and the fixings. It's the fact that we should be thankful every day for what we're afforded.
I love the fact that this is my church, and my church is outside of the four walls, that they go into the community and help people when they need it the most.
I just recently found out how to make homemade greens the Holy Spirit way. I need this turkey to put in my greens so I can make it for the upcoming Thanksgiving family dinner.
We are back with our special guest, Dr. Donna Baptiste, and we do have a few more questions for you, Dr. Baptiste. So far, you have been giving us what they call it, the tea. So next question, what advice can you provide to parents and their adult children as they navigate how to communicate with each other respectfully and effectively, especially in areas where there are noticeable differences in lifestyle choices?
A great question, Ms. Jazmine. Great question. So let me zip your readers through. Parenting will have all kinds of themes and ideas as young people, children move from the baby phase, adolescent phase, and so on. One of the things I want to leave with your listeners is the idea that parenting of adult children, huge deal. If you think about it, by the time the young person gets to say 18 or 19, the years in which you will always have influence, but how you work with them, eyes on them, they're right there to check things and so on. Those days are over.
Right.
Because young people are now making their way into the world to live their own lives, and some to have their own families, some head off to college, some start working, move out, and so on. It's a different stage of parenting than, say, when they were adolescents, where you could keep eyes on them, but it is no less important. And so this, what I just said here, recognizing different phase. And what I want parents to understand is parental control ends, meaning not your show anymore, and you don't call the shots. That naturally ends as young people sort of grow up and emancipate or move out or sort of find their own, and that's good. And what it transitions to is parental influence, which is because you gave birth to this child and because this child is important to you, and because this young man, this young woman, this person is somebody whose life you care about. Like any other relationship, we want to be able to influence them. And parental influence is actually lifelong. Sometimes you will see something and offer it. It may not always be accepted, but you offer it. Sometimes your person will come to you to seek it. Parents struggle just with this transition alone. When am I switching from the earlier days of authoritative, maybe control, which is where you set the boundaries for a child, to where now I'm in a place of influence, but I'm not leading it? I think some parents struggle. Some young people struggle. Even to know that transition, they maybe stay dependent for too long. And parents must do the things that allow them to move on in the circle of life. So that can be recognizing the importance of influence. The question is now, how do I do that? And so you always want to respect your young person's voice. You always want to look at the big picture. Don't ignore the data of them doing well, only to focus on the things they're not doing well. Sometimes this person has moved fully into their own lives where they have a family. You must accept and embrace their people. Hopefully they were introduced really well, and so you know who these people are. You may not even care for them, but you must respect the choice of your young person. And then there are ways in which, as maybe you have grandchildren are born, you must work from behind.
Mm-hmm.
You are not the lead of parenting. You might see things, we wouldn't do it this way, because those things irritate people that are trying to and allow them to make their own mistakes. And so this is just a set of tips. And then I think the idea with influence is it always requires relationship, meaning proximity, connection, respect, I would say admiration, and fondness and caring and all the good things that keeps relationships soft. So just that switch alone to being influential, lifelong, is going to be important for parents to grasp as they work with the young people. And so on, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, must give room for their choices and decisions, must also retain the right to influence them in a positive way.
Wow, that was so good. Oh my goodness. I don't even have anything to like say about that. Like that's so good because, you know, especially in Black and brown families, it's like, you know, you're my child, we're not friends, you know, I'm above you. And like you said, a shift happens at some point, you know?
Yes.
I remember when I first had my son, I called my mom like, whoa, like, why didn't you warn me? You know what I mean? She was the first person I called. And it's things like that, shifts in our lives and going into, like you said, different phases, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. Your parents been there, but it's all about that communication and how you know, grow through it together.
Yeah, and there are classic mistakes that we parents can make. Like I'm the parent of two young people, 30-something-year-old young man, and I have a niece that I raised as a daughter, and she is in her late 30s. But I have to know my place. So here are some of the mistakes that we can make. Our voice is too strong sometimes in their business. We must allow them to make their choices. And also we must allow them to go through what we did, which is sometimes we make a choice we must reverse. We allow them to we can be too strident in that. We want to see it exactly how it works. We're thinking they're younger, not anymore. I think we sometimes disrespect their choices. There are things they want to do. A particular person they might date, somebody they might marry. And so there are times in which you don't like it, we don't like it, and so we want to fuss. And so you see conflicts with in-laws, with the people that come into the family. Family life is one in which there is what we call expansion. People come in, and contraction. People leave through death and different ways. And we must keep up with ourselves to be respectful of how we manage those transitions. So when people come into the family, we must be prepared to welcome them and support our people, our children, or those we raise to be good in their roles. And so don't get there too quickly with heavy duty opinions. And then to the extent that we can, we leave them to do their lives in their families, expecting that they will reach back. And so you see young people reaching back for advice, or they pass around to care for their parents and so on. And that is always a wonderful thing in the circle of life. So parents, we got to watch ourselves about how we navigate these spaces. Young people must also watch themselves in terms of how they use and solicit and use and respect parental influence.
I like that word, respect. It's a mutual thing. It always has to be a mutual thing. Yeah.
And how you said you called your mom and said, hey, what do I do? It's a wonderful honoring of your mother and her influence in your life. It's lifelong.
Right. Wow, that's so deep. Okay, we got a few more questions. I know we have a lot of questions, but like you come with so much to give, and we're just trying to soak it all up. Okay, what advice can you provide to the rising generations, like the millennials and Gen Z, as they navigate how to create healthy boundaries and new traditions that may differ from the boundaries and traditions they were taught as adolescents?
What a great question. And a lot of little minefields here to watch. So, you know, I would say a lot of people in my generation. So we are the boomers, right? Or the older millennials. Sometimes we can bash young people. And I think we can bash them because there are things that we grew up with, the way we were, let's say with authority figures or how we did. I think the first recognition is millennials and Gen Zs, especially the young ones, Gen Xs, different age. In just in the world, information age, technological age. The influences are not just in the home, television,
Social
internet.
media.
So there's a way in which this generation can process information and do relationships that will look different. For example, many of us have raised our young people to respect emotions, to express emotions, to ask for what they need, to give us their opinions and so on. And so they do. And sometimes it can come over in a way where we said, well, we never talked to our elders that way, different age, because we raised them to tell us what they think and feel, right?
Right.
And they do. So we got to be patient with that stuff. I think there are many things in the current generation that make young people anxious. Your reputation can be destroyed in a heartbeat. By one act on the internet, viral video, and they watch it. It happens to their people they care about, including celebrities, and it happens to their friends. It makes them afraid. And so they toughen up and they get lawyer-like, asking questions and setting boundaries around privacy and who knows what and all that because of the nature of the age. I also think some of the institutions that we trusted and felt good about, marriage and religious organizations, the information age have brought them drama where that is concerned. And we trusted these institutions, sometimes our generation, without asking questions. But now our young people, and now it's worldwide and the information is coming, the sexual abuse that has occurred, the misappropriation of finances, ways in which these organizations, how people treat each other, they may have watched, and so they don't trust them. They want a different path, right?
Right.
And so what I'm saying is patience with this generation, recognize the age they live in is different, and we must adapt our thinking about what respect is, how it shows up, and so on. So that is my advice to our group, and my advice to young people is also respect that we grew up in a different age and things look different for us. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
But
that makes a lot of sense. My sister is 7 years younger than me.
Yes.
So we kind of in the same generation, I guess, but like when I was growing up, it was totally different from how she was growing up. And we're like, we're polar opposites almost. So sometimes it's hard for me to wrap my head around some of the things that she does. But even
decisions.
Yeah, even like when I was a kid, I don't think we had social media. I think that came out when I was in high school. So like, watching.
We didn't have cell phones.
Right. Right. Well, we had the those big block phones. Right.
The Nokia.
Right. So
you got on the little phone and you made the dial with your hands, right?
Right.
Certainly there was nothing like the internet. Well, I mean, it's been around a while now, but when you think of us, people talked a different way. I mean, you have to get married, right? Because that's what people, but some of these institutions have let young people down in terms of what they expect. And so they're choosing different ways, and we must understand that as we try to influence them.
Right. And we have to respect that.
We have to respect it. So many trends are happening where young people are less apt to be religious, not necessarily spiritual. Many are, but They don't, they you know, we used to revere our ministers. You know, go talk to your pastor. Well, so much information now about ways in which these institutions, wonderful, wonderful supportive institutions, but some of them make mistakes.
Right.
And young people know about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Okay, next question. What tools do you encourage your Black clients to adopt to create healthier mental health practices?
And may I talk first about women in that perspective?
Absolutely.
Right. So speaking not just about Black people, but Black women now. And anybody that raises this title, biracial women, women who were born here, women that were not, once you self-identify as Black, there's a reason why we wrote the book promoting the mental health of Black women. And we wrote what clinicians should know and do, meaning if you go for therapy or professional services. If you look around the country, there's a sense in which the mental health of Black women have been neglected. And so that's the first thing. Women have struggled under the burden of doing too much, being asked to do too much. You name a movement in the United States and around the world in which that is about the advancement of the family, of people of color, Black people, where Black women are not leading. Think of community movements, ministries, the churches. Women are the laborers in these settings. They're also the laborers in their family, right? And in many different ways, in professional ways, but also just regular ways in which they're supporting. It has burdened the lives of Black women, and many get a lot of significant spirit, but some are not taking care of themselves. I was one of those women doing for others. And, you know, it's important to do that. But to go the distance in life, we got to take care of ourselves. So that's one of my first messages to Black women. Find what you need, recognize when we're struggling. Black women can struggle with three things that affect us. One is high stress burden, and we will never draw lines, but we have to. We have to know when too much is enough. And not just a stressful thing after stressful thing and said, we're going to press through. That's number one. Two, we can self-silence. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to, so we can keep our own secrets. We can even keep secrets about the things that affect us. And then you're always afraid, should we ask for help? What will people think of me? I mean, and in terms of social barriers, for how people understand Black women, so much negativity. And then Black women are not apt to ask for help sometimes. And they should. And help doesn't mean professional help, but tell somebody that you're struggling. And so we keep those things inside. Those things are affecting our wellness. And I think it is directly and indirectly related to why Black women in particular are in the bottom of a lot of statistics of health. Maternal mortality, right? Some of it relates to these dynamics. Struggle and different kinds of health issues that we shouldn't. I was looking at CNN and somebody talked about breast cancer. More apt to die from breast cancer. Some of it is is in the things that I talked about and ways in which we treat it. So this is my biggest advice. Start taking care of self. To Black women, to Black people. Difficult times are here, I think, in the United States. All kinds of reasons, social, political. It feels to me almost like a resurgence of some difficult things. Denials of racism and its impact, right? A way in which people are worried now about physical safety, say Black men. So there's a lot going on, and I would say it's troubled times.
Yeah.
Let's find our anchors, and it has always been faith, family, the support of communities, people of like mind. Let's find our anchors, because we're going to need it, I think, in the times that are coming in this country.
Yes.
And so this is my conversation, what that looks like. But in every instance, meeting with a community, connecting with people, narrating what we feel, supporting other people, all those things are definitely things that will anchor us. And we must find them. Faith, right?
Faith.
faith, community, giving voice, narrating, right? And building ourselves up through wellness activities, right? That we know would be good for us. Those things have always been anchors to troubled times.
I love that. I'm taking a mental note for myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I have to, those of us that are counselors, we don't just give advice, we must live by the advice so I'm trying to find those things in my life also. So I'm a person of faith.
Yeah.
And, trying to live well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you, as a counselor, you pour so much of yourself. You're constantly giving, and it's like pouring out of a cup, and then the cup can't be on empty when you're done. You know what I mean?
Empty. And there's another thing we must also be mindful of: the counsel that we provide. As we collaborate with clients to address things in their life, we must stand in line to do the same for ourselves.
Right.
So I can't be talking all this stuff about rest and wellness and all that. And up for a long time, I did sort of talked out of one side of my mouth, but not doing the same in my own life. And I cleaned that up. Stand in line, be humble enough to stand in line and take your own advice.
Yes.
Is my suggestions to our younger counselors. And we must do that too.
Wow. That's amazing. So we're getting ready to wrap up, but I got kind of a question for you that'll help us solidify getting to know you a little bit better. So you talked about these anchors.
Yes, the anchors.
What are your specific or individual or unique anchors?
Me as a person? Yeah. In our field, we talk about, I'm going to use the metaphor of a wheel, but people have talked about it, the formula, different kinds of ways of wellness, of living well. Not just avoiding difficult things, but living well. So you can hear me talk about wellness and resilience.
Okay.
Two important concepts. And they're not just opposite to illness or, let's say, doing poorly, not thriving. They're different. They're different, right? Wellness, the center of the wheel of wellness. In literature, but in mental health literature, the center of that wheel is spirituality. Not necessarily religiosity, because not everybody adheres to a tradition in which they're doing sort of religious activities, like going to services or meeting up with other people. And I believe my chief anchor is faith, in my case, God, and my devotion to living in my sacred book is scripture, the Bible. But you can't just do those things alone. And joining a community of like-minded seekers of a spiritual life. And so that is, for me, my anchor, my chief anchor. Everything else is secondary to that, right? These days, taking my own advice, I'm trying to protect my health and wellness, so that I want to see my children's children.
Right.
And so I'm fighting to exercise, lose weight, movement, right? I'm also learning. Lifelong learning is one of the anchors. And that doesn't mean being in school, but things that get me excited, things that are new and different. And I'm managing my emotional life. I don't want to just popping off the handle, conflict with this person and that person. So I'm learning to be humble and accept feedback, give it when I need to, setting boundaries where I need to. And then there are many other things that are known. What we said, the things that facilitate wellness. One that people may not think about, but I want to leave with your listeners. I'm going to use the word awe, and awe just means being in the presence of something that makes you joyful and gives you wonder. And this is why people visit mountains and go to beautiful gardens and want to be by bodies of water.
Yeah.
But you can find it in the park next to your house, watching beautiful pictures online, babies. Anything that gives you a sense of wonder is a great thing, and we need to invest in that. And so these are some of my current anchors. And of course, one that I thoroughly enjoy is being in relationship. There was a study done, it used to be called the Harvard's Men's Study.
Okay.
And now it's called just the Harvard Longitudinal Study. And they tracked generations of people over time. It started with men, but then they started talking with their children and da-da-da. In every scenario of at the end of life of what made a difference, relationships would be number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Wow.
In family life, that makes a difference to the quality of life. And so we must fight for relationships and we must protect them. So these are my anchors. And so I fight my family life, my friends, my church sisters, my church brothers, so that's me.
I love that. I love that. Well, Dr. Baptiste, it has been truly a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation with you. I want to move this book directly in the middle of the camera. So if you are, and this is for young professionals specifically, right?
It is for professionals, clinical mental health. It's for counselor types or professional types, which is if people come to you, know what to do.
Okay.
But you know what? Regular people can read it to see some of the issues we talk about.
Okay. Well,
Regular
thank you.
People can read it to see some of the issues we talk about. So,
well, I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm not a mental health professional, but I'm a Black woman. So I want to see what's in here. And thank you so much again for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And guys, that's a wrap. I will see you guys on the next episode of Thrive Alive. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Jazmine. Thank you.